Hello and welcome to TRT World, live from Istanbul. I'm Rachael Ruble. Also ahead on the program. Hello and welcome to TRT World. This is the News Hour, live with me, Rachael Ruble. Coming up in the next 60 minutes, the plot thickens after NATO and the U.S. say the missile that killed 2 people in Poland was not fired by Russian forces. Another day in Ukraine starts with Russian missile attacks, including on the capital, Kyiv. It was a sigh of relief for many after Russian forces withdrew from Kherson last week. But it seems to have been short-lived as Moscow has resumed its relentless bombing of multiple Ukrainian cities. Leaders of the Western Balkans nations are gathering in Berlin as part of plans for closer EU integration. The host, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, is expected to oversee the signing of a series of agreements under the so-called Berlin Process Summit. The Korean peninsula is on high alert after a North Korean missile landed just a few kilometers from the south's coast. This is the first launch to cross the country's maritime boundaries. Both South Korea and Japan have condemned the launch as unacceptable. A loud explosion was heard in Kyiv early Thursday morning as a fresh barrage of Russian missiles struck the Ukrainian capital. Officials say the Kremlin launched more than 100 projectiles aimed at different cities in several waves. Air raid sirens are sounding across the country. In the past 48 hours, Moscow's attacks have targeted the south. Residents of the Kherson region are being urged to evacuate as a push to reoccupy the newly liberated territory continues. Across the U.S., at least 62 people have been killed in weather-related incidents after one of the worst winter storms to ever hit the country. Nearly half the deaths were in Buffalo and New York State, where many people are still without power. There's been looting and military police are being brought in. The blizzard has forced thousands of flight cancellations, leaving many passengers stranded. But conditions are expected to improve. The Taliban has prevented Afghan women from entering public parks and fun fairs in Kabul. Since coming to power in August last year, the Taliban has imposed many restrictions on women's lives. The latest ban further squeezes women out of public spaces. Vote counting is underway in Tunisia as the country voted for a new parliament for the first time since 2019. But the elections were widely boycotted by the most prominent opposition parties, and citizens seemed to follow their lead. Exit polls in Israel suggest former Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his potential right-wing coalition partners may have won enough seats to form a government. But the polls are preliminary, and official results may change as the votes are counted. And a small Arab nationalist party approaching the electoral threshold may take away Netanyahu's expected victory. Political tensions are worsening in Peru, where at least 16 people have now died during more than a week of anti-government protests. Nurses across much of the UK have gone on strike for the first time since the National Health Service was founded after the Second World War. The dispute is with the government over pay, conditions, and staffing. It's just one of a number of strikes taking place this month as tens of thousands of workers from a range of sectors take industrial action. All right, we have breaking news coming into us now. It's been announced the deal allowing safe passage to cargo ships carrying grain exports from Ukraine has been extended. It was due to expire on Saturday. Turkey brokered the grain deal alongside the United Nations, and just a short while ago, the Ukrainian infrastructure minister announced the deal will be extended for a further 4 months. Hello and welcome to our special coverage of Queen Elizabeth II's final farewell. I'm Rachael Ruble, live from Istanbul. Yeah, and just a few moments ago, we saw King Charles arrive at Westminster Hall, where Queen Elizabeth's coffin will be transported shortly, carried to a gun carriage, and then a procession will lead it to Westminster Abbey. We can see the gun carriage there. But Putin says he is open to negotiations. And even if this 10-point plan from Zelensky is propaganda, as you say, why not just sit down then and start negotiations? Because that is the whole point. I mean, obviously both sides are going to be coming from very wide differences, but that's the whole point of negotiation. How do you view the results of these midterm elections? We often see it as a referendum on the current presidential administration, and there was a lot of talk leading into it of an expected Republican red wave, which, as we know, didn't turn out. So do you agree with President Biden that this was a victory of sorts for the Democrats? Is climate change solely to blame for this? Pakistan has monsoons every year and is no stranger to flooding. Could there not have been better government planning? What do you make of the timing and the optics of all of this, with Xi's visit coming just 5 months after Biden's? It's also 6 years after the Chinese president's last visit to Saudi Arabia. So is China trying to get a stronger foothold in the Middle East? All right, that's it for this news hour, but I'm back in a couple of minutes with a look at the day's top news stories. Bye-bye.